Do business. Act business. Business matter. That's the business. Business matter. That's the business. Business matter. That's the business. Business matter.
Nigeria's economy is in need of export because export, as a matter of fact, will help us be able to create so much in terms of our foreign earnings, as well as definitely address inflation and some other economic indexes. How we're able to marry policy, programs, entrepreneurship, and businesses ideas to help us to be able to have more export than import will determine the future of our economy. This is Business Matters, and my name is Stephen Ipalobo Lawson. You're welcome.
Business matter. That's the business. Business matter.
We know so much in terms of petroleum exports, but how much about the non-oil exports are we focused on as a society or as an economy, whether it's from the administration in terms of public sector or it's in terms of the private sector? We must begin to take this very seriously. If not, the Nigerian economy will be in a very, very terrible state. Let's have a business update.
Business matter.
Hey, beautiful. Your eyes, your smile are all begging me to take you home tonight. Now reading page 3. Experience unlimited superfast internet access from Entel 4G.
Entel. Live more.
Business matter.
As our culture on Business Matters, we invite a distinguished individual who is going to help us do justice in the topic of the day. And today we're looking at commodities export, the pros and cons. Joining me in the studio is no other person than an individual who is a director and chief marketing officer at Hero Commodities Trading and Export Limited, a company he conceptualized and started in April 2018. He has worked in various business development roles from retail, commercial, and corporate banking in key economic sectors like power, gas, infrastructure, water, and wastewater infrastructure, as well as structured trade. He has an executive MBA from ESUT, a business school, Enugu, and also has a bachelor's in management from the University of Port Harcourt. This aside from various training courses in credit analysis and structuring, corporate and project finance, money laundering, relationship management, professional selling skills, etc. from A-rated training organizations. This individual is a man who is an experienced facilitator in international trade and other key finance and business topics. I'm talking about no other person than Mr. Charles Nduka. How are you?
Thank you very much, Stephen, for inviting me. I'm fine.
It's good to have you on Business Matters.
Thank you very much for inviting me again.
You know, I mean, you're somebody who I follow, and I realize that you do so much in terms of facilitation when it comes to exports, especially getting people to be well, prepared when they want to go into the export business. And we know so much about the country as it is right now in terms of our dollar earnings, the state of our export and import comparison, and how much Nigeria needs to be able to drive a policy that will help us be able to take our export more seriously than we are doing right now. But as a way of starting up, a lot of people wonder what commodities is all about. Is commodities just basically limited to the oil industry, or is commodities limited only to the metals, or is commodities obviously a food and agricultural concept that we need to be able to understand what exactly it is?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Commodities are basically, you're looking at traded items on international markets. Probably you're just talking about oil. Of course, for Nigeria, we know that crude is our major foreign exchange earner. You're talking about also precious metals, like we have in the in Nigeria. But of course, you're also looking at agricultural commodities and all that. I'm in the commodity space and all that. However, you look at what we're looking at in Nigeria is how do we encourage non-oil export? That's where the issue is, because for us as a country, as the last quarter report, I think first quarter report from the National Bureau of Statistics, it shows that oil dominates. We're still doing about 92%, and above in oil exports and all that. And for these other commodities, we must just look at a deliberate way of bringing them on board, because that's the only way we can diversify our economy. We're talking about diversification of this economy. The only way we can do that is if we have deliberate push for these other commodities and not just the oil that we've been doing all this while. So that's the area.
And do you think that the non-oil commodities group, as so much as the case is, can actually show up in terms of foreign earnings for the country, even far better than the oil and gas?
It can. If you look at countries like other countries, I mean, you look at Netherlands for one as a country. Look at their land space and all that. If you go look at the figures, what they are exporting, in agri commodities alone, it's far above what we even earn from oil in Nigeria. You look at the land space of Netherlands, look at a state like Niger State, look at a state like Kaduna State and all that. Look at the landmass where we are, even where we farm as a country. You find out that there's a lot that can be done for a country like Nigeria, that we can use to earn far more than we're even earning from oil exports. Well, it's all about, having that deliberate push.
Okay, for example, you stated Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Does Netherlands leverage on commodity exchange platforms in order for them to be able to meet their export targets?
I know definitely. I mean, whatever they trade on, there are global commodity exchanges. I mean, that some of these guys can latch on to probably promote whatever. But what is important more for me is even the production. What we have in Nigeria is we are not producing at all. We are nowhere near there. And unfortunately, the insecurity problem we're having is even a major issue. I grew up in the north, and I visit the north from time to time. And I can tell you that even from looking at it physically, it's a grim future we're looking at, because, people are no longer farming. Okay. People are not going to their farms. I mean, you are at the risk of being kidnapped and all that, But, I once took a train ride from Kaduna to Abuja. And I was just telling him, I made a video of it. I said, look, on both sides of the road, thousands of acres of plain, lush, fertile land. For nobody's farming anything. Nobody's doing anything, because the insecurity is really, really, really affecting agriculture. Go to most farming communities in the north. You find out that people are having small farms around their houses for their own personal feeding, because their farmlands are probably kilometers away and all that, but you can no longer venture that far. Now that's one. And then number two is, even at that, we're even doing subsistence farming. But even at that, you're talking about big-time agriculture, you're talking about mechanized farming and all that can make use of the vast land we have, to produce what we need. And definitely, if we can produce enough, the next option is to kind of export the excess we have. But the issue now becomes, do we even have enough to feed the 200 million plus people we have in Nigeria? That's where the major issue is.
It's really a sad story, because we know right now, I mean, you and I before we came on air, we were looking at some of this issue of insecurity, how kidnapping has become an industry. Yeah. And so the farmers, headers clashes is still ongoing. Climate change is also there as a factor that is actually, creating much more tense situation. But taking that away, if we look at the role of some of the government agencies, even though we know that some people like yourself still do export, several other people still get into export, and we know that the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has to be able to play a role that can still facilitate, the export drive, so to speak. So much more. What have they been doing all this while? Would you give them a pass mark, or is still a journey not yet started?
Yeah, well, like I said, it may look like a drop in the ocean. But I would say, for one, the CBN, like I said, only have purview over monetary policies. They can do the much they can do on that space. The Nigerian Export Promotion Council, I must give them kudos, because that's one agency of government I deal with, and I must say that they have been forthcoming. In fact, I did my training and everything when I started out in export. I needed to, understand field, and they were there to provide that this thing. But so these agencies are doing all this. Of course, there's a limited budget to what they can do or what they can do and all that. But you need to, aside from pushing out these policies, on the other end, what is government able to handle? Even I give an example. Aside from even the insecurity issue, what of logistics? It's another major issue. Apapa Port today handles about 92% and above of our export volumes. Same with import and all that. There are other ports in Nigeria. On airport is there and all that. But what are we doing? We need to have a deliberate policy to push these other ports, to decongest Apapa. See what Apapa is today.
True.
It's difficult to go in there. In fact, for a long time, I avoid using it because even the truckers, you tell them in the north, where's your destination? Once you tell them Apapa Port, they'll tell you no, they're not going. Because I would rather do several trips than go line up waiting for my turn to go into a port in Apapa and all that. So it's easy and it's an issue. Though I see a little bit of rain in the sun, in the sense that for us really, I'm looking at, must we do all export through through Lagos? That's one. Number two, using the road. Okay. The rail system is very key. A train wagon can drag like 30 containers, 40 containers at the same time. That's like 40 trucks off the road and all that. So the reviving of the train system into Apapa Port is a welcome development. We're not there yet, but eventually when that becomes fully on stream, it will help a lot, because that means that people can easily go in, both import items or export items can easily hit the port. And then of course this also dovetails, of course, into even the shipping costs, because the waiting time for every vessel at the port, it also determines how much you pay. The freights are going up. I mean, if I tell you what we were paying 4 or 5 years ago compared to freight today, it's a tough call, because these guys have to, we're going to stay in your port for this number of days and all that, rather than, drop our cargo or pick whatever we're picking and leave on time. If you look at the average spend time for cargo in Nigeria, looking at about 20-something to 30 days. In other ports, it's probably 1 week, 4 days and all that, and they are off. They are dropped and they are off. But here, all that...
we're going to go on a short break. This is quite a very passionate conversation. I don't want to let you go if I don't ask two major questions. Viewers, please stay tuned. Business Matters continues after this commercial break.
Experience unlimited super-fast internet access from Entel 4G.
Entel. Live more.
You're welcome. If you've just joined us, this is Business Matters, and we're looking at the topic commodity exports, pros and cons. And in the studio with me is not a person than Mr. Charles Nduka of Hero Commodities Trading and Export Limited. Charles, before we went on that short break, we talked about in terms of the logistics aspect of it all. Now, a lot of people will be wondering, two areas I would like to touch, one of which will be, what does it take to actually start up an export business? Because you're going to look at documentations, you're going to look at sourcing for whatever it is you want to export. You're going to look at, you just mentioned earlier before we went on break, the issue of freight, some of those terminologies. Perhaps we would like to gain a little bit insight to what it's going to take to get into an export business today.
Well, getting into an export business, were a number of things. First of all, you need to probably have a registered business. For Nigeria, for you to have an export license, you expected is that probably a limited liability company. For whatever reason, enterprises are not allowed to get export licenses, so you have to be a limited liability company or probably a cooperative, of a number of people. That's all. Having an export license, number one. Number two is to start with, what do you want to export? What products are you looking at exporting? For me, I chose what I export based on...
Some people say charcoal has to be... I'm not too sure. But for you,
for me, I started out with ginger, hibiscus flower, and all that. I grew up in the north. And I grew up in the ginger farming area of southern Kaduna and all that, Those were my formative years. So it was easy for me to go back to where I grew up. The commodities that were there already. So I tell people any day, what commodities, what areas, sourcing is very key when it comes to export. What commodities are you looking at exporting? So sourcing, number two. Number three, finances. Some of this export can be, pretty...
weighty in terms of capital. I mean, you have a background in the banking industry, and you were involved in project financing. So perhaps you throw some light as you're responding to
well, funding, of course, whether I like it or not as well. Export is also a very risky venture.
Okay.
Of course, for the issues we have discussed, issues of insecurity, and of course, and all that,
inflation and the rest of that.
It's a risky venture. But however, I always say that the things like mini exports. I mean, it mustn't start from the large. For some of us that do the containers and all that, these days there are smaller. People do smaller quantities and maybe probably export by freight. All you need to do is do a proper research. These things, where are they wanted? Of course, you have to look for, first of all, your sourcing. Number two, your market. Who are you selling to? And I'll tell people the easiest way, the Nigerians all over the world today. So the easiest way to even get a market is, okay, look, where are your friends? Where are your acquaintances? Where are they based? Ask them to help you do some little bit of market research and all that. In your area, what products, things we have here, what can we export to that place? Things that even, I know someone that does hibiscus flower just in small packs, sent something about that, because some of these shops in London and all that, and outside London, hibiscus is one thing that the people use for tea a lot and all that.
Okay,
so
that's true.
things like that, so that it wasn't be.
I have a friend who does snails. I think I'm not too sure how correct that is, but you export the snails from here. But those are biological.
It depends on that. Well, sometimes people kill them dry and clean and all that.
True.
We also depends on some countries don't allow. Like I know the US for one, they don't allow anything meat or any meat product to come into the US from outside the US. It's completely a no-no. So that's why I say you need to look at. Do just a bit of your research. This country, which country is demanding for this? And then, of course, there are a lot of the International Trade Center, ITC is online. They have a lot of information. That's what we go to. I mean, you can check and know who's importing what. Where are these commodities going to? Now, of course, the National Bureau of Statistics as well. Their quarterly reports are also very key because it tells you who is buying what, which country is it going to, and that tells you that if country A is buying a lot of this product, it tells you that there's a demand for it here. So then you ask yourself is who is in that country that can I sell to, and you begin to make that. So these reports are a bit of market research is very, very key.
So why are banks not funding export?
Like I said, it also boils down to, I mean, these are SMEs. You're talking about SMEs. They may not have the collaterals and all the things you require. The banks want to be fully. In fact, when we were at the non-oil econ seminar, and then banks were saying CBN should do some bit of provide some bit of guarantees, particularly for the SMEs and all that who don't have the wherewithal. And even at that, I mean, if you're looking at, I'll give you an example. If I'm doing ginger, 4 containers alone, I'm done with 100 million is out. Because a container of ginger today is about between 25 and 30 million naira, just one container. So if you're asking me for a collateral, and probably sometimes I have customers who are asking me for 10 containers, and they're asking me for a collateral for 100 million, I don't have your house, your property worth 100 million. So even if you give me 100 million, I'm looking at about 4 containers. So how do you do the volumes we look? So it's not a collateralization thing. It's important, but hey, so we have to have that deliberate policy. I hear them talking about factoring, which is also another key area. If you can do factoring where you probably, by the time I'm doing 1 or 2 containers, rather than wait for the money to be paid, you can pay me off from probably at a little bit of discount to enable me do more transactions. That's probably another way we should be.
But that would be from the end
that will be post export,
okay,
not at the beginning of this. So these are the issues that we're looking at. And I mean, what CBN is saying, I mean, CBN was very clear during that seminar that look, hey, it's not our job really to provide FX for you. You a bank, you should be able to generate some of these FX for yourself. I mean, if you have customers who are demanding for FX for import and for your other operations, then begin to think of an ingenious way of funding export to earn foreign exchange for yourself, because they are actually threatening. I don't know how that's going to come by, but they're saying that look, at some point we'll be just stop selling. At some point they were selling to BDCs. We thought it was not going to end. But you wake up one day and say, look, no more sale of FX to BDCs, and nothing has changed. But people thought, oh, no worry, next 1 month it will change. Nothing has changed, and they're still telling banks the same thing. That look, hey, watch out, because very soon CBN will stop providing FX for your transactions. Now,
looking at the question earlier on, you and I were talking about Japan and the question of devaluation of their currency and how that can boost export. What's our own position on that?
Well, we are not exporting enough. That's where the issue is. Because really, like I was saying, I mean, if the currency devalued, it's better off for me. I'm buying in naira, I'm selling dollar. But the issue is, are we exporting enough? Look at our crude oil export. Our quota from OPEC is 2.2 billion, so 2.2 million barrels per day. Today we are doing about 1.2 million barrels. 1 million barrels, of course, issues of insecurity, theft, and all that, going on in that sector. What of the other sectors? How much of these things are we exporting? So the issue is, we need to export. And of course, our industries are now, look, you go around Lagos, so many empty warehouses and all that. These were thriving factories and all that. We also have to take care of our power issues. If we have power in place, people will probably be more amenable. If I'm exporting to a certain country, and whatever they are producing in that country, if I have power enough to produce it, why can't I make it here? Because sometimes just adding a little value on these products will triple or sometimes even double the cost or the gain you get in the international market. Take, for example, cocoa. The international chocolate, the chocolate industry today, global, is about $0.9 trillion. Nigerians' export for cocoa in the first quarter was about 75 billion naira. So that's just like not even a drop in the ocean, So, and we're number 3 in Africa today. I think Cote d'Ivoire is number 1. We have Ghana, then we have Nigeria and all that. So, but the issue is, can't we make chocolate here? We can make the chocolate here. If we can make chocolate here, we may not be able to compete with known brands like Cadbury and Mars, but it's a start.
Yeah, but I know Ghana has its own indigenous chocolate brands too.
Yeah, they're beginning to. Yes. That's what we need to push here as well. But like I said, anybody will tell you, people will say, look, we need to fix a lot of things. Power is a major issue. For some of us that are SMEs that are probably doing, if you're doing small production, you could use a small generator. But when you're talking about massive, large-scale production, look at what the cost of diesel is today. It's switching off the roof there. And of course, how do you maintain? Talk to most manufacturers. They are bleeding. They are bleeding, and it's going to take a lot.
But with all of this said, is export business a viable venture to go into?
Very viable, because I see a lot of future in it. It's the market out there is huge. Look at what's happened there. Look at small Ukraine as a country. Look at what the impact of not being able to export grain from Ukraine did to global commodity prices. Price of bread shot up across the globe because wheat Ukraine was a huge part of grain export to the globe. And even though that the war is still going on, what did they do? Okay, let's have a truce. Open up the port to Ukraine so that the goods can go up. And the whole world is coming together because of just one country. Just to ensure. So I see a lot of future in trade. There's a lot of and that's for me, that's why I went in. In fact, one of the reasons why I went into export, like I said, looking at the same dollar issues, I think way back 2016, 2017, before I left the banking industry, I remember I used to work in the corporate banking department of a bank in VIA here, and I remember then before that major devaluation, where Naira moved from 150 to about 300 and something and all that, we had those issues because some of these foreign banks were coming in. What was the issue? We had obligations, banks in Nigeria had obligations in dollar, they couldn't meet because they have opened transactions for us, based on maybe our import transactions and all that. These banks were funding it out there as a loan to the Nigerian banks in terms of foreign loans. And then what happened? When there was no dollar anymore to meet some of these obligations, some of these guys started flying into Nigeria, and we were like, what's happening? But the CBN just couldn't. At some point, I saw the devaluation coming, and boom, in one fell swoop, Naira moved. That means that, I give you an example. Imagine if you had an obligation of about $1 million in a bank. Converted to Naira was about 150 million Naira. Then all of a sudden you were in over 300 million Naira for the same facility. Yes, so when I looked at it, I said, look, the way to go is to end dollar.
That's the way to go.
And that's where
All right.
That's what comes in.
Thank you very much, Charles. This is a very interesting one. We're going to put you on our list and make sure that we're going to reach out to you. This is a very passionate engagement. I want to say a big thank you for making a date for us with us on Business Matters. Well, viewers, there's so much we can take. Quite a very insightful and very illuminating discussion. And please stay with us. After this short break, Business Matters continues.
Business matter. Let's talk business. Business matter.
Viewers, as you've heard, it's important because the country itself has to earn in foreign currency. That way is going to help shore up our currency strength as well as create opportunities that can take us away from what we've been known today as the poverty capital of the world. Export is obviously one of those areas. If the government is able to address some of these issues, just like you've heard our guest, especially in terms of marrying the fiscal and monetary policy to a position that can help us thrive in this particular sector, obviously we are going to be better off for it. Nigeria is indeed blessed with a wonderful, wonderful supply of land resources. How much are we exploring that is a determination that must become our reality as soon as we're able to address this insecurity issue so that Nigeria can actually show up on its export. Please follow us on our social media handles. There's so much we can bring to you on this particular edition of the program. My name remains Stephen Ipalubo Lawson. Bye for now.